Welcome to the Unriveted Podcast, where we talk about digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and people. John, today's podcast is brought to you by one of my favorite beverages, root beer by Henry Weinhardt's.
Never had it before, but with such a shining endorsement like that, who could say no, right?
Ooh. So just for our listening guests that don't have visual and can't see us, it is not true. I do not shop at the Halloween Superstore for my attire, although John may.
That is quite true, yes. And we are joined today by a very special guest who did not get the memo on wearing their most outrageous shirt, as Martin and I are clearly demonstrating for our visual listeners. Today, our guest is Irena Pereira, who is the CEO and founder of Unleashed Games. So we've kind of been building a trend here on Unriveted. I think our last guest was also involved in the gaming industry. So it'll be good to kind of continue that conversation and see some of the comparisons and contrasts between this guest and our last one. So Irena, thank you for joining us on Unriveted, as is typical for the show. Now that I've given a brief introduction, I'd like to turn it over to you.
And thank you, Root Beer, for sponsoring the show.
Of course.
So yeah, thank you so much for having me. We're doing some really interesting things with Unleashed that I can't wait to get into. And I have no idea the conversation we're going to have. It's going to be a blast. But why am I here? Well, my background is I've spent the last 25 years making games. I spent the first half of my career making MMOs, massively multiplayer online games. So like hyper social games, think of games like EverQuest, World of Warcraft, a game I worked on, and others that you might not have heard of, but games that were really transformative. And then I spent a lot of time making mobile games, so games like Game of Thrones Conquest and most recently Monopoly Go. So I've run the gamut of game development from great core gamer experience to highly monetized product machine, and the ways that we have efficiencies, don't have efficiencies, and ways that AI can solve some major problems. And that's kind of what made me build Unleashed Games, is what does it look like when we truly use AI as a force multiplier for game devs, and you have the opportunity to make infinite worlds, and what do we need to do to get there?
This is awesome, Irena. This is fits exactly where we want to go. We want to be in an infinite loop and have that dialogue that just never ends when we're playing a game.
Yes, that's the thing is, I see all of these startups getting massive valuations within the venture space around NPC Dialogue. And I'm like, dude, nobody wants to talk to an NPC for that long. Do some user research. And you know what?
Right,
you look at the economics of those models, do you know how much they're charging per gamer hour? The relative scale, we built World of Warcraft. That was, 15 million DAU. And the amount of cost for just keeping those people online had to, the margins had to be really generous. Their pricing for a lot of the AI tools actually drives a lot of AI tools into eating all of the revenue from players. No, it doesn't make sense. But anyway,
Wow.
That's a rabbit hole I could go down, the economics of AI.
That's a great topic. So when we talk about the economics, we also think about the carbon footprint too. So, yes.
Sorry, hyperventilating.
Substantial.
Is it warm in here? Oh no, that's just climate change.
Oh no!
Oh
wow.
no! Well played.
It applies either way, but keep going.
It's all good. So, what are some of the gains you can leverage today that aren't going to take you down the financial burden hole with artificial intelligence today?
Well, the dream of runtime AI for games. Oh, hell no. Unless we get some sort of fission power plants to be able to deliver, I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff that I'm seeing on my Facebook feed because apparently I like the good stuff about science and astronomy and, climate tech. Um, Power efficiency is near on the horizon, but we're not there yet. And figuring out how to power the world that is sucking down all of these kilowatts um, just to hit a bunch of NVIDIA graphics cards. That doesn't make any sense. It's, but, when you bring AI into a production time context, now that's a different story. What you're doing is you're just shortening timeline and, the overhead of 7 years worth of development and bringing it down to a fraction of that, like, 20, 30%. You can get a lot of efficiency gains by not requiring a single artist to make 18 versions of the same armor because you have male and female character models that are all in different races and making them fit from ogres down to gnomes. Like that's a human being has to make all of those things, but AI can do that faster, more efficiently, and nobody's going to be mad about it. Nobody. But those are the places that, AI can be actually considered to be a ethical application into a game development production process. It's a tool in a toolbox as long as the artist starts the whole process and the cat finishes it. Sorry.
For our listening fans, you just missed the cat walk across the screen a little bit.
And jump in my face, which was how rude, Mr. Man. That's my kitten. I'm sure, but for posterity, his kittenhood will be forever immortalized. But yeah, a lot of these dreams of being able to walk into a holodeck and have it be runtime and a dynamic, game experience, just like endless AI dialogue. Do players actually want that?
Right. That brings up the very first question that came to mind, and I'm going to unleash my inner
I see what you
geeky
did there.
gamer here. Yeah. See, so let me unleash my my inner geek. I have played, games on the computer for, since childhood. I've never been very good at them. My friends have always just destroyed me
have to be.
brutally. Exactly, yeah. So I ended up playing, single player games. So I didn't really have to worry about other people, entering my space. But a question that comes to mind here, and I don't know the statistics behind some of this, but talking about using AI in the development of games. So one game that came out several years ago now that was a big media, it was all over the news because of its procedurally generated environments. No Man's Sky, which was like a space exploration game where they were like, oh, there's endless planets to explore, and you'll never run out of space, so to speak. So that whatever was promised in that game obviously fell completely flat, and it became like this legendary failure of video game deployment. But there's a thing I want to ask, and maybe it's changed. Has the ability to use AI to generate a video game that could potentially never end without the use of people? Obviously, World of Warcraft has been around for 20 plus years, I guess, now, but people are obviously in the background still creating new quests and new content and this and that. So if we had AI that was able to do that job and essentially create a video game that either the updates were created by AI, or even if the game itself had some AI engine built into it so that updates never needed to be sent to the user, the game itself would just create, its own it would just organically evolve depending on a player's choices in, say, like an RPG game. Is that kind of where the future you see of AI going in video game development? And then the second part of that question, because Martin always knows I like to ask questions that go on forever, is one of the statistics they talk about on Steam, for example. So the Steam platform for delivery of video games. Anyone in computer gaming knows what Steam is, I would imagine. But how they talk about how some people will have like 90% of the games in their library they've never finished. So if we think about that too, in tandem with my last question, if AI can make a game go on forever, is it even wise to do that? Because will people even want to play a game that never ends or has no finale? So, two questions there. Are procedurally generated games by AI the future? And if they can be, is that what gamers want? Sorry.
That is, and thank you for doing that sum up to help my aging brain manage the talking points. I may cue you for half number two, but that is a great question, and that's something that I ask myself all the time. Like, what is it that gamers want? And this is the thing that we test, right? Is that gamers want a playground. They want something where they can be creative, but then also can be kind of escorted. It's a happy blend, a happy medium, but they want a place to be able to explore and get into trouble. And a game that never ends is not an ideal for players, like, creating something like custom and unique for them. Because here's the thing, and this is one of the reasons why, the population of World of Warcraft declined. Or what happens in our world when everything becomes increasingly bespoke, like custom for you. Then you don't have anything to talk about. You have no shared experiences. There's no shared context. There's no sense of community. If everything's just for you and just for your own pleasure, like, how do you share that with somebody else?
Good point.
So
it's a good point.
People, like, the next evolution in video games is to create group content that you can experience with other players. And Fortnite does this. Even Minecraft does it in their own way. Roblox also does it. They have different perspectives on how to bring people together to engage in content, and what sort of content they open up the door for other players to like mess with, or like creative people, UEFN and like the Roblox like platform, that kind of thing. You can make your own Minecraft servers with your own seeds and rule sets. All of these things are what players want. But at the same time, these games, though they're focused on gameplay and like hooking players, there's very little that actually supports people connecting. Like, not just like, hey, I was in a party with you, but like connecting. Because we're all kind of the same in the game. When you're all the same, there's no reason to ever explore your differences, right? You have the same powers as me as long as you can pick up the right gun in Fortnite. That doesn't, like, there actually are a few moments in Fortnite that make the gameplay more fun, which is where, like, you have to be a gunner on the top of my car while I drive. And hopefully I don't suck at driving, which I do in Fortnite. I'm terrible at it. Never have me drive. I just shoot people. But it's the cooperative part of gameplay that actually makes things interesting. The thing that makes life interesting are the people that we have relationships with and the people that we do things with. Right. So that's that's where games need to go. And there's no game that kind of does that. And you can, like, the really cool experience, and that this is where, like, what do players want? They want an experience that makes them like feel mastery over how they show up in the world, in a fantasy world. And then they want to explore deep, dark corners that are risky and, pump up their heart rate. They want to go on a high adrenaline adventure where like they can cast spells, and then we can have an AI algorithm that can create endless worlds, endless zones. But the thing that you were mentioning about No Man's Sky, to bring it back around, is No Man's Sky made a fatal mistake. And that was their planets were too big, their systems were too big, their population density was too low. There's a certain population density that you need, and No Man's Sky did do a great thing around, having lots of downtime within gameplay, because high adrenaline, high velocity, high intensity gameplay actually reduces the opportunity for players to connect.
Right.
It's the difference between going to a club and going to a bar where the music's kind of quiet. You can have a conversation someplace and you can walk away with a friend, or at the club, you dance on the dance floor and then you go home and you don't remember what happened. Oh, that's just my experience. No, but
wait. So wait a second. So we're going to relate this to gameplay.
It was a long time. Anyway, okay. But it's what they're looking for is that they're looking for infinite variety, but they want to know what to expect. They don't want like a complete handle pull on a slot machine and have a completely different world appear for them to play through. That's disorienting. Right. So players want, they want infinite variety of what Disneyland offers. Metaphorically.
I gotcha. So maybe maybe it's thinking about individual experiences generated through endless iterations of some AI model, but rather maybe community. So thinking about it like we were saying, like World of Warcraft, like if there's a patch or something that comes out, but everyone gets the content of that patch. So maybe it would be more like that. You can make a game endless, but it's not completely customized to the end user.
Exactly. So your patches come out faster. You can create more variety. You can create, but also with Gen AI, what it enables is, our game has UGC in it. You can build a village with your friends and family. How do we use AI in that context? Well, your village is going to look one way with one texture set. And my village, we may be both humans and we have like the same texture set, but we will render out like a texture set for our village that is uniquely for our village. So that when you stumble upon our village wandering around through the server shards, you'll see like, hey, this looks familiar, but it's different. Right? And it's a small way to use AI.
So if we're both human, what does that make you, Martin?
Wow,
there's the question.
So I think there's a song that talks I feel like I'm more like a freak that comes out at night, but that's a whole different thing.
That might be a player class, kind of the necromancer.
Yeah.
The lich.
Well,
yes. I mean, going with the shirt.
Good point.
Wow, just pick on Martin.
You are clearly a mage, John. Look at those spell effects that you have on your shirt.
Yeah, if I could only get it to move around, that would
your aura is swirling.
That would be ideal. Oh yeah. I'm sorry, Martin. Well, over to you, Martin. Over to you.
But that's another place that we're using AI, by the way, is that we're working with a company called Zebra AI, and they have an AI-based smoke, fire, and liquid generator.
Nice.
And we attached their smoke generator to a character model. So we literally made the lost smoke monster in our game.
Wow.
It was
that
so
might
cool.
Be neat.
So, I mean, but again, these little ways that we're applying AI in ways that you wouldn't necessarily imagine, but it still engages and requires artists and creative humans to come up with this stuff. And that's the thing for us, is that we always want to use AI in an ethical form where the artist remains the center of the process and the center of the creativity.
Right, right. Augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence. This is a phrase that Martin came up with a while ago.
Oh,
No,
yeah,
That
that's a more
AI is.
appropriate term for what it is,
it
actually.
is. It
Mhm.
is. And it's not this glorious umbrella of everything. It's meant to be what it is, and that is augmenting the human. The human's still in the loop. It's appropriate. It's like, it's the industrial revolution, the next generation of automation, process improvement, digital transformation. We keep forgetting about that term. So this fits. It fits very well.
Well, actually, speaking of digital transformation, yes, like this is, I'm actually an advocate for digital transformation and transforming organizations from waterfall organizations into like deeply agile organizations. But I could go on and on about like nerdy process speak.
We
But
could.
in particular, I operated in an Air Force unit. Like there was a time when I wasn't making games, and I was instead making intelligence and mission planning software for the United States Air Force. And we had an app that we built that took a 16-hour manual whiteboard process from this was something that was used to be able to mission plan in the Middle East, running daily air operations. Took 16 hours for 3 to 4 people to complete. We built an app with the help of Mr. Eric Schmidt of Google. He guided us in this process to build an app that solved the problem and brought the process down to about 45 minutes
Nice.
with
Oh,
a
wow.
web
That's a
app.
real transformation.
And then, and just that step saved the United States DoD, the Department of Defense, $150 million a month in fuel savings.
Wow.
So absolutely incredible. And then while I was working in the unit, we started incorporating AI to do the job of the human, right? So that it did the primary calculations. And through various points of optimization, it went from 45 minutes to 14 minutes to 9 minutes to about 45 seconds. And
Huge reduction.
a huge reduction. And now, the force multiplier that has allowed is it's allowed for more headroom to deal with emergency stuff and stuff that actually matters, rather than this routine process that they've been doing every single day for the last 35 years using their Raytheon software that the United States taxpayer paid, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars for. But you know what I mean? Like AI has this ability to create optimizations in the places where you least expect it. And that is just as valuable as creating a cool image of like Spider-Man in the Star Wars.
This is
Right. Probably
fascinating.
more valuable.
Way more valuable. As we wrap up here, I'd like to throw the last one out to you, Irina, to talk about if I was to think about my career and what I might do differently, going forward. I'd like to play that question on you and getting to where you are. Any steps you might take differently? Any things for advice for our listeners to grab a hold of?
Oh goodness. Well, I mean, I'm in a unique position because, I've been making, games with hundreds of $1 million budgets, right? Movie-sized budgets, and, serving 15 million daily active users with World of Warcraft, and, Monopoly Go, I think hit $3 billion in 470 something days, like insane, an insane business. Games are a lot of fun to make. And that's where AI, like there's a lot of pushback within AI or around AI in games against the application of it, against the usage of it. And if you're an AI company, there's a lot of negative energy about it. But here's the thing is that you don't need to copy have this this IP issue, this copyright issue, and around the art. You can use AI for things like accessibility, for letting more people to be able to access content, right? We do that with AI generated subtitles. Like imagine the world that like somebody had to actually type that.
That's true.
Or with policing communities, like there's so many places to be experimenting with AI to make people's
Mm.
lives better so that we don't necessarily have to be afraid of it. So, whether it's making games or making apps that can transform lives, or save the Air Force money, like the trick to any great thing is learning empathy and figuring out how to make something that somebody wants, and that makes their lives better.
It's interesting, and I won't go too far into this, but we had a guest on Unriveted, I think about a month ago, Martin, that was also basically saying very similar about how AI, one of the untouched parts, or one of the parts that people don't think about too much, is kind of like the emotional intelligence aspect of AI. So that reminded me of what she said when she was on our show, and I hadn't heard that or considered it before, but I think that's something that we need to spend a little bit more time on as a society of people focusing in that space. So it's good to hear it from two separate people from two entirely different industries mentioning the same thing.
That's wild and actually very cool. So I don't know if I
Yeah.
answered your question, but I think AI is a force multiplier and is going to fundamentally change how we interact with software, how we live, and we should all be excited for it, but we also have to like work together to make sure that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot while doing so, because, model collapse is a thing. When you're moving too fast, like you could ruin it for everybody. Getting a homicidal AI in place, that's good. That's a bad idea too. So like, let's just figure out like sustainable uses of AI and not invalidate people's creativity or desire to be creative. Like, let's just like with the earth, we got to live in harmony with the resources that we're given.
Well, Irina, for the Unriveted crew here, which happens to include the gentleman with the odd shirt. Oh, that's both of us. Odd shirt.
I
We
feel
want to
so
thank you.
underdressed.
Next time we'll send the memo out in advance. We'd like to spring that on people at times. But this was fascinating, and we look forward to chatting with you in the future. Thank you so much for being on Unriveted.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.